Hi, it's Rex Rogers from Cairo. This is vlog number 8 and what looks like will be my last vlog from this city because I'm heading to the airport about midnight tonight local time to catch a flight at 4:05 a.m. local time. It'll take me to Cairo and then to Chicago and then finally to home. So ready for that, but at the same time I have thoroughly enjoyed this trip to the Middle East and North Africa. Been in Jordan. Mostly in Amman, but around in Jordan quite a bit, and then here in Cairo, mostly in Cairo. But Cairo is so huge that to be in Cairo is, in a sense, enough. You can't possibly absorb it all in one short trip like this that I did. But I did learn a lot about the city this time, and I mean, little things. I've talked a lot about traffic and people crossing the roads and what have you, but today it struck me they really don't have crosswalks. They might have a few here and there in the city, at intersections where people go to the corner and walk across the road, but they're ignored if they're there. And for the most part, jaywalking is a way of life in this city. I mean, there are people crossing 3, 4, 5 lanes all the time, every which way you can imagine. 2, 3, 5 people, maybe pulling a cart, maybe children, 2 or 3 women together, maybe an old person with a cane. And meanwhile, the cars are zooming back and forth. They slow down, go around them. Cars have no lanes. They go wherever they want to go, and they go in the slot that's available, and they keep moving. We were driving today, and another thing I noticed was the horns. You know, it struck me that they're beep, 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 beep. They constantly are honking their horns. But they're not honking. They're beeping, and what I mean by that is the sound of the horns is beep, 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 beep. It's a lighter weight. I suppose they have heavier duty horns, but nothing like the horns that typically we have on family cars, sedans back in the United States, or trucks, or that you would hear when we more seldom, less often use them, unless you're in a major city in the United States. And that I think is interesting because they use them all the time. And we were going along and today in an area where the fellow driving had to turn around, and he's doing like a K turn, and he's coming around like this, and there's a guy coming down, maybe 50 years old, coming right at him. The driver goes beep beep, and the fellow looks at him, keeps right on coming. Driver keeps right on going, and the front bumper of our car actually bumped the thigh of this guy. The guy just didn't pay attention, kept going. Now, it wasn't, a hurtful thing. It wasn't any speed involved. In fact, no speed at all. You're going, literally like a inching along. But the fellow just kept on coming, and the driver kept moving. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And I guess they survived that, and they don't know how to negotiate it, but it's really strange. As I said, jaywalking is clearly an art form and a way of life in this city. Excuse me. Notice, too, that there's collective decision-making. Just about everything that we did, and I'm talking about wonderful friends that I admire and respect a great deal, so none of this is critical. It's just cultural differences. It's kind of fascinating, and we even talked about some of this. But just about everything that they did, and I've run into this before in a couple of other countries, but everything that they did had to do with a long conversation. I mean, including a U-turn or how to get to where they're going. And it wasn't very often like, okay, A to B to C, and then boom, decide and go. It was a conversation, because relationships, and as they say, the story is part of their culture, and they talk a great deal about story, and they'll, in essence, tell you a story in answer to your question, and they might go way, what we consider way out around the horn to get there, but they get it done eventually. But you have to tune in and listen in a different kind of way. If I were to pick 2 words, just looking at my notes here, if I had to pick 2 words that I'm taking away from Egypt this time, which is, say, Cairo, it would be building, meaning construction. Everywhere you look, there is an incredible expansion going on, as I've mentioned before in these vlogs, but massive buildings, corporations, apartment buildings that eventually be sold to individual families, and people live on several levels. So the family lives on 3, 4 levels. Clearly, in New Cairo, it's exploding, explosive. But even in old Cairo, and even up near the pyramids, there was a degree of building going on about everywhere you looked. Even refurbishing some old things. So this economy is booming somehow, some way. even with a different kind of political atmosphere, perhaps, than some of us as Americans or as Westerners would perhaps be used to. The other word would be military. And the military, of course, the current president comes out of the military background. Military is extremely prominent in Egypt. You see soldiers everywhere. That doesn't mean they're all watching you necessarily, but they're everywhere present. I heard today or learned today, the soldiers don't make a lot of money. It's not like they're attracted to it for that reason, typically, except for those at the higher echelons. But they do dress very well in current uniforms. They have a lot of privileges, and those privileges can save them money in terms of local schooling, local housing, groceries, etc. And they have, of course, the degree of assigned and presumed power and privilege because of their position and a protection for themselves and their families, and with all probability lifelong employment if they want it in the military, because the military's needs are there. They govern this country. They're everywhere involved, and if you're in military, you're in government, and you're probably not going to get laid off and lose your job somewhere. You're going to be needed. So building a military are the two words I'd walk away from Egypt with this time around. I like the country, even the desert. It was about 95 or 6 yesterday, back down to 71 Fahrenheit today, so very pleasant. We've worn jackets, but mostly just run around shirt sleeves. And it's the winter time, springtime. There's a lot of blooms taking place. A lot of trees. Took a lot of pictures just driving by. They weren't that great of pictures, but the drive-by pictures of flowering bushes that are enjoyable to capture. See if you can get a decent shot, and sometimes you get some pretty amazing shot. So I highly recommend Egypt to anybody. I'd like to come back myself. I'd like to bring my wife back here, especially to see the pyramids and the Sphinx. They're just too mind-boggling every time you see them to contemplate when you think about how long they've been here, how in the world they were created, why they were created, built, how long they've lasted, what it says about the worldview of the people who built them, and their sense of legacy, their sense of themselves. And I'd also highly recommend to you, if you're here, as I've said before, to go to the Royal Museum, the public museum right down in the city by Tahrir Square, because it's a fascinating place. The royal mummies that are there are just, again, I don't know what word to use other than mind-boggling when you look at these people that lived 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. They're just human beings like me. But you can look at them and you tell the structure of their face, and some look like they're just asleep. The embalming and the mummification was so well done that long ago. Of course, now they're preserved and protected in cases that are environmentally secure and so on. But I'd love to go back and see that again sometime. If we come back to Egypt, I'd really like to get over and see the Suez Canal. I guess you have to have a special permit as an American, which we didn't have this time because it was unplanned. But it's only an hour and a half drive from Cairo. I didn't realize that. Alexandria, I'd love to go see Alexandria, which is north and up toward, of course, the Mediterranean Sea, and closer near the mouth of the Nile River where it dumps into the Mediterranean Sea. That's about a 3.5-hour drive, I'm told, or you could take a train. I'd love to go to Alexandria. I'd love to go to the Suez Canal, and if I was really ambitious, I'd like to go to what's called Upper Egypt, which ironically is actually in the south, toward the south and upper levels, higher elevations, where the Nile River begins. And there, of course, you have Luxor and some of the other kinds of valleys of the kings, more pyramids, and more things left behind by the pharaohs in that period, which are, again, in and of themselves, just fascinating. So Egypt is old by definition. Saw a lot of camels, not old camels, but saw a lot of camels. They're here too, and still holding the fort, as it were. But love to come back to Egypt. So this is Rex from Cairo. Last vlog for this Middle East North Africa trip. We'll catch you later.